Been wanting to share this episode with you because it's about an unexpected, really powerful moment. And if you follow me on Instagram, you may or may not be aware of what I'm about to say. I'm sharing this with you so that you can perhaps draw from my experience, and maybe it might help you reflect on certain things and reconnect with certain things. But I was lying in a sound bath at the Happy Place Festival, eyes closed, fairy lights above me, the sound vibrating through my chest, and there was a lot of festival hum, shall we say, in the background because of where we were located. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to concentrate here. There's no way. This is not going to be relaxing. But then, my thought, I felt this physical, full body almost response to where my thoughts were going. And I want to share it with you. So as I was lay there, I started to think about what I do, what's important to me and my passion. And I could hear, sounds a bit bizarre how I'm describing this, but I could hear this voice, obviously my thoughts, I'm not hearing things, but I could hear this voice within me. And it was a voice that I have spent a lot of years trying to hear, if you like, and that I've always wanted to hear. And I have heard over the years recently, but it felt like it was more persistent and it wanted to tell me something. And I allowed myself to just tune into it, just allow it to come through. And honestly, it was amazing to hear it, because there was this voice there that came and it got louder and louder, and it said to me, you could be up there, referring to the stage within the teepee. And I don't mean I could be up there doing a sound bath, because I've never done a sound bath in my life, I wouldn't have a clue. But it was I want to be on that stage. I want to be up there. I want to use my voice. And it was this really strong sensation of you could be up there. And even as I'm about to say the next thing, I'm noticing the discomfort of the other part of me that's coming through right now. But I'm going to say it. And it was I should be on that stage or on a stage. And I don't mean that in a delusional, grandiose way. I hope if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know me enough to know that I don't mean it like that. But it was almost this realization and acknowledgement of this part of me that believed I should be using my expertise, my experiences, my voice, my ability to use my voice to spread the message even further, to reach more women, to let them know that the problem isn't that you are too much. The problem is that you've been made to feel like you have to be less. To let more women know that they are enough just as they are. And this almost a feeling of a purpose with that. I feel quite vulnerable actually sharing this with you, and emotional, not gonna lie. But I honestly felt it, this full body yes to it, this reconnection and reigniting this why within me of why I do what I do, and just sort of really connecting to the depth of that. And then what happened next was so interesting, and you might be familiar with this, maybe. Another voice came through, another part of me that I am much more familiar with, that has a completely different tone and different words to that one that I try and listen out for. The voice that I don't need to listen out for because it's a higher volume usually. And it said to me, Charlotte, don't be a knob. Stop being a knob. Don't be big-headed. Who do you think you are? How arrogant to even think that you should be on a stage. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting. This is me noticing and observing my thought process, by the way, which if you've had therapy, you may be familiar with, or if you're going to think about having therapy, this is something that you can learn to do, where you unhook from what's going on and you almost observe your thought processes from a distance, so you don't feel like you're in it or you are it. It feels like you are observing it. You're at a distance from it. So you can see what's going on and where it's coming from. You might be familiar with those sorts of words of who do you think you are? Don't be big-headed. The words that sort of tell you have to stay small, you have to shrink. It tells you to dim your light, to stay quiet. It's the same voice that perhaps tells us that we have to work hard, that we have to earn our worth almost. And the same voice that tells us that we can't shout about our achievements or we can't honour our worth, It's this tightrope that we walk, especially as women. And this is the conditioning that so many of us grow up with through the different systems that we're exposed to, whether it be school, religion, home, society, culture, and lots of different contextual factors that can contribute to it. But we're taught explicitly and silently to make ourselves smaller, to not be too much, to not take up space. We are taught to question, who do we think we are? Don't shine too bright. You might dim someone else's light, so then dim yours so that you don't. But as I lay there in that TP, there was that other voice, like I say, that I was tuning into, that was getting louder than ever. And that voice said, you are allowed to want this. You are allowed to take up space. You're worthy of being on a stage. You know enough. You have a voice. You're allowed to share it. And what that voice says is worthy of being heard and needs to be heard by more women. And honestly, I just felt this, as I say, it was like reignited within me, this want and need to share that message. It doesn't have to be on a stage, but just to share that message wider. Following that experience, I wrote a poem. On a Friday, I wrote a poem about it, and it just came out of me. I'll go on to this, but I've written things, I've written poems and emotive stuff for years, but this one, it just came out of me, and I thought, I want to share this at an open mic night. I thought that would be a good idea, like spread my message, try it out. It's an opportunity. Never done an open mic before, never shared my poetry live before. Let's do it. I knew I was going to town on the Saturday, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to print out this poem and just see when I'm there if I can find someone that knows of an open mic or whatever. So just in case. By the way, town is Manchester. If you're not from Manchester, you might not relate to that, but yeah, we call it town. Interestingly, went for a meal, thought on the off chance, I'll just Google now again. And I found an open mic night. And I walked in and I thought, I'll just see how I feel. The open mic night was for sort of musical theatre singing night. And I thought, oh God, they're not going to want a poem to be read right now. But I sat there and it felt like such a safe space. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to ask. And I went up and I asked him and I said, do you mind if I just read this poem? Now, if you are familiar with people pleasing, can we just pause here and acknowledge what an amazing shift that is from someone who used to be hiding in the toilets at work because she felt anxious speaking to people, for someone who used to blush all the time, for someone who used to sit in team meetings and feel like they're about to do a TEDx talk when it came to speaking up. And then didn't speak up because the adrenaline felt too much and I felt too shaky. Going from that anxious overthinking people pleaser, to stepping up in a place I've never been before and actually asking someone firstly if I could do this, you know, to feel that permission within me that I could ask. And I did ask. And they said, yeah. Oh my God. And then I was like, I can't believe I've just done this. I've just committed to this. I felt sick. I felt shaky. I had to go to the toilet. Too much info. If you are listening to this podcast, you can probably relate to this, or you can imagine how it might have felt. Yes, I do my podcast. I do YouTube videos when I remember. I share on my stories a lot. I don't have any worries with that. I do talks, I do workshops, but this felt different because this was poetry. What was being triggered or activated within me was stuff from the past. I've always hid my poetry, really. I've never shared it loud. So this was the first time ever. And it just so happened to be a stage and a microphone, and a really brightly lit stage at that. And I hadn't rehearsed anything. I'd written it the day before and I had it on 4 pages of A4. No prep, which is unlike me in the past. In the past, I would have been prepping. And I went up and I did it. And do you know what? It got such a good reception. Like, so many people loved it, and I got so much positive feedback, so much so that I've been invited back there to perform some more poetry as part of a show that they're putting on. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so proud of myself for doing that. The reason why this felt like something I really wanted to share with you was because as a child, I always wrote stories and poems and journals, but I hid them. I'd scribble down what I was feeling in secret. I'd try and get I don't know if you remember them, like a secret diary with a padlock that for some reason I thought no one would be able to get into. Hide it under my mattress or my pillow. I'd rip the pages out so no one could see them after I'd written them. Not because the words weren't good enough, but because I didn't feel good enough. I felt embarrassed. I felt shame for being too emotional. Thought I was going to be mocked and things like that. And this is what can happen, is that somewhere along the way you learn that being fully seen, being fully you, showing parts of you doesn't feel safe. And therefore, to protect yourself, you need to hide it away. You need to mask it. So standing on that stage, sharing something so raw and vulnerable, it wasn't about performing. It was about me saying to younger me, saying to that little girl, that younger girl, you don't have to hide anymore. You're safe now. Your voice matters and it can be heard. And it's okay to let it be heard. So the reason I'm sharing this is to help you perhaps reflect on what you might have been taught to hide along the way. You know, what part of yourself have you maybe tucked away and not fully shown to anyone, or shown anyone at all, or that you struggle to show to yourself? What joy or dream or desire have you maybe pushed down because you were told it was silly or self-indulgent or too much? Maybe you loved singing as a kid, but you were told to be quiet or told you weren't good enough. Maybe you loved drawing or writing or painting or music, but got teased for it. Maybe you dreamed of doing something creative as a career, but was told that you had to do something more academic, or you were told that you couldn't make a job of it, so you had to do maths or science or something like that at uni instead. Maybe you've dreamed of sharing something online, or speaking up in meetings, or standing up for what you believe in, or sharing your opinion about something because you feel like it matters so much, but then the fear of being judged stops you. There's a part that comes in to protect you from maybe what it fears it will feel like if you do that. And as you think of that for a moment, and you think back, rather than asking yourself, what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? What's wrong with me? With criticism, just asking yourself and allowing that curiosity to ask, when did I first learn to hide that part of myself? When did I get that first message, directly or indirectly, that it wasn't safe to put myself out there, or to shine, or to do what I love, or to say what I want to do? You know, it might have been words someone said, it might have been various experiences, it might have been unspoken messages, it might have been words that people didn't say, it might have been a look, a laugh, you know, an unspoken rule that you just absorbed because you knew you felt those rules. And for me, this journey, for want of a better word, from where I was to where I am now, it has certainly not been a straight line. And I know it's not easy, and I know it's easier said than done. You know, I used to literally hide. I used to skip certain lunch times because I didn't want to go in the staff kitchen when there would be people in there and it would be busy. I didn't want to speak. I would walk through local areas pretending, or if I had a phone back then, I was pretending to be on the phone rather than acknowledge or interact with people because I just felt too wobbly or too anxious. I would drink on nights out, not because I really wanted to, but just because I wanted to feel confident enough to go out and to be with people. For a lot of people, there's this huge fear of making a mistake, of saying the wrong thing, of looking stupid, of being judged or laughed at, or of people thinking that you're big-headed. And actually, that's often a reflection of these parts of us, these voices that are there, ever present, that we hear at certain times more than others, that tell us that we're being big-headed, or that who do we think we are? You know, so then it makes sense if you over-prepare all the time, or you avoid things, or you rehearse things you want to say. And it makes sense if you might freeze in certain moments or stay silent because there's certain parts of you that want to protect you from what it fears. And back when I experienced all of what I'm talking about, the idea of getting on a stage, of sharing emotive words, stuff I've written, risking being fully seen, it was unimaginable. It was not even anything I would have ever considered being possible, which is why that open mic, oh God, I feel emotional, which is why that open mic moment felt so powerful. It wasn't about the applause, external validation. It wasn't about approval. I suppose it was about approval in some senses. It was about me approving a part of myself that had been hidden, but it was about reclaiming my voice for other people to be able to reclaim theirs. Even if my voice shakes at times, even if it's not perfect at times, it's telling myself and that younger me that I still have a voice that deserves to be heard and should be heard. And we can think for a long time that we have this problem to do with confidence. I'm not confident enough to speak up, to share, to be seen. But what I've come to realise is it was never about confidence. That was never the thing that I should have been focusing on. It was about safety. It was about feeling safe enough to be seen. So if you can really resonate with this, I just want you to know that you might hear stuff out there or see stuff on social media that says, you know, use these positive affirmations, do this mindset work, just let them think what they want, as Mel says. But sometimes, and for a lot of people actually, you can't override that feeling of your nervous system feeling unsafe. And it's not a flaw in you if you can't. It's a reflection of the survival response within us that is wired within us. It's a protective response based on what it remembers and from when it learned it. And when I started to understand that, that's when everything started shifting for me. I stopped trying to like fake it till you make it or like push myself into things that absolutely felt too much. I stopped focusing on preparing and over rehearsing and willing myself to feel confident enough to speak. I started focusing on safety, cultivating safety within me, what I needed, listening to that part of me that felt unsafe, seeing what it had to say and what it could tell me about what it needed to feel safe enough to be seen. And I know that might feel very, like unclear as to what that looks like in the practical sense. And that's why therapy can be so helpful in terms of exploring that and learning what's really holding you back, not what you're maybe assuming is holding you back. So, in summary, even in those moments where you don't feel good enough, feel you don't deserve to be heard, or you feel like you should shrink yourself, I just want you to know that you do deserve to be heard and you do deserve to be seen and you do deserve to feel safe enough to be seen and heard. And that is possible. Thank you for listening to this. I really appreciate it. And whether it's a painting or a drawing or a story or a poem or a podcast or any other passion that you've been hiding or been putting on the sidelines because you don't think it's worthy enough of doing, I hope today's episode reminds you that it does matter and it is worth it. It is worth doing for the joy it brings you and the passion inside you. And I hope that has been helpful, and let me know if this resonated, and check out on Instagram poetry and more messages that I want you to hear and receive. Until next time, I'll see you soon.